Mike's going to have to approve it.
Welcome, everyone. I don't know. Any announcements or highlights people have?
I can give a quick status update regarding endpoint security. I think Teddy reviewed it, and I'm merging and making a few changes, and it should be ready in a day or two.
Piggybacking.
Sorry, go ahead.
With a piggybacking on that, we actually have granted the ability to sign for endpoint security now.
Yay.
Not that we figured out how to use that, but in theory, the pieces are coming together.
Yeah, so there's quite a few things we need to get in line before we can do that, which is just the CI building the packages and then the CI signing the packages. Unless we want to hack it together and get the signing keys and put it onto someone's laptop for that, but let's avoid that until we're in dire straits.
Yeah.
So we could discuss what's a I don't know what's the right word. When would we enter dire straits? So if we had to think of a timeline, so let's say we're able to merge Sarvel's pull request here. We have the ability to do endpoint security process events this week. Let's say that capability exists. Apple isn't blocking us. We're the only ones blocking ourselves. What's a good timeline before we say, let's stop waiting for the CI signing ability and let's sort of sign with the new keys the same way we're signing right now with the old keys? November, December, something like this.
I think there are two things here, maybe. One of them is, at what point do we decide to basically just sign some bare binaries so that we can start testing stuff? And that might happen a lot faster, right, than cutting a release that's been signed that way. So I think that those are different questions. And I think that we may say, you know what, let's actually just start manually signing stuff. We can start testing some of this workflow. We can start understanding how it works. That's not that big a deal. And, we might decide to do that in 2 weeks. I don't know, right? But that's believable to me. And then I sort of think the main drivers for what looks like dire straits around signing are tied into a much larger set of questions, because changing our signing key is probably also tied to the header reorganization, the copyright changes, the bundle identifier changes. So all of that kind of just happens at about the same time. And I think we decided we were going to target September 1 for 4.5.0. Do you think I don't know if we can get all the header reorg and copyright change. I guess we can do header reorg and copyright changes for September 1. But signing key and bundle identifier change, I almost want to kick forward to the next release. But I could be persuaded otherwise.
Seems reasonable. I like how you broke it down. Let's take that approach. I think I also agree that we can get the header changes and the copyright changes in pretty quickly.
So I stuck that down as an agenda item since we're bouncing all over the place. Last time you were saying you were doing a big header reorg PR. I wrote some tooling to bulk change the copyrights, which seems to work well enough. So whenever you merge yours, I'll cut a PR with the copyright changeovers.
Yeah, cool. We could talk about this right now. So that's almost ready. It's going to be 700 files changed, right? And the heads up here is everyone that has an open PR or that is working on a branch locally is going to need to rebase. And in some tests, some small tests that I ran, the rebasing, the auto rebasing works for the header renaming. I'm not sure if it's going to work for the copyright rename. So I'll make an announcement, like in general, saying this, and I'll make myself available to help anyone with like Git foo to try to do the rebasing and all that kind of stuff. So let's try to get that this week. If you have the time, Seth.
Yeah, if you wanna, I can probably cut mine in a couple of hours once
Okay.
you merge.
Okay.
Recognizing that my couple of hours sometimes spreads out into a day, but should be pretty doable.
Yeah, and then I'd appreciate like a review on the OpenPR right now, which is just making sure that nothing else slipped in there. Like what it should consist of is just header renames, and then every once in a while inside CMake, it should add the header to the specific target. So that's pretty much all that's going on there. We can move on to another topic, unless people have questions.
I mean, it sounds like I mostly wanted to see. So we're thinking you'll merge that this week. So that's pretty sweet. Are there any open PRs? We should probably try and carve out a little time to look at the open PRs for anything we want to try and pull in before we do these two massive changes, but they're also only 20 of them open now. So it's like feeling much more manageable if we just end up redoing and having to manually rebase 20 of them. A section that we inadvertently skipped over because we just got sucked into exciting conversations. I see a lot of new and additional faces here. Does anyone want to bring up anything? Any questions or issues from the larger community and crowds?
So I wanted to just bring up the Apple Silicon stuff in macOS 11. I've got a DTK. I don't know exactly what is allowed and what's not for remote access and testing and stuff, but I've been poking at things, just trying to get it to compile, but there's a lot to do.
If you have the technical ability to grant remote access, I haven't read Apple's agreement. I can't imagine why they wouldn't let you.
So we, in theory, actually have something internally, but we don't yet have access to it due to reasons like pandemic and so on. But yeah, when we get our hands on it, we can take a look at it. But yeah, any remote access is useful. But yeah, to make sure that it's not against the end user license agreement or NDA or things you may have signed.
Yeah, if anyone's interested in has something to test, I can test it, but I think their remote access in general is probably a no-go. Or it doesn't work at all.
If you can share the compilation errors, maybe that can also help a little bit. I don't know.
Or were you building the main branch, or were you building the AMD64 branch?
This was a week and a half ago, last time I touched it, but it was the main branch. There's a branch with some ARM support. A lot of things are just hard coded to look for x86, 64. But yeah, there's compilation errors that go on a lot, but I got some progress. But if anyone's interested, I can share that with them.
I have not heard from Apple for my DTK requests, so I'm envious of a lot of you. Other community stuff? Okay. Do we have anything else we want to circle back to on endpoint security? Charvel, it sounds like you and Teddy have next steps, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I need to leave early today, so I can maybe catch up async, but I don't have anything much to add. Just need to get the code changes in.
Okay, so let's see. Endpoint security, next steps in header reorg. Teddy, you're almost ready. And you wanted someone to maybe take an eyeball at that giant PR. Do you need anything specifically on that to go forward?
I'll let you know tomorrow.
Okay.
So shameless self-plug, I finally made the BPF pull request. We have a customer that is testing this out, and I'm applying some changes to it to make it more accurate. There are some things we have to trace in addition to what we already have, like the chdir system call to change the current working directory and things like that, so we can more easily resolve file paths when special system calls are used, like execve@, or open by handle at, and so on.
Okay. Will it be a problem for you if the header reorganization happens before that merges?
No, it's not a problem. I will rebase.
Do you have a solution for the current testing failure to run test as normal user on test as root?
For the BPF thing, you mean?
Yeah, I haven't looked deeply into the error in Azure, but it looks like one that I've never seen before. So I imagine it's caused by your change.
I know there are some tests for the old BPF code. Didn't check them out. I do have a new issue in my pull request, which is caused by probably undefined behavior in the expect-like interface we have to handle errors. I didn't try to debug it. Stefano has taken a quick look at it, but we didn't spend too much time on it. What is happening there is that there's probably some code being optimized, and the is checked or is error method is not being called anymore. So when the expect object is destructed, it will throw an error, an exception, using Google log, because it is not happy that we didn't check for its result. But that's not sure we did. So we're going to have to debug it and see why it doesn't work. Yeah, I think Stefano did find several undefined behaviors lying around. And yeah, it's something we will have to look into before we can merge anything.
Very cool.
Windows 32-bit support?
That looks like something that, I mean, it's not, I haven't seen many changes in that branch to make it possible. So it looks like a good thing to make it work.
I think my only concern here is the whack-a-mole, where we often convert things to size T, and we should convert them to in64Ts. If we make all the changes right now and we don't have a test, then we're not going to be able to detect when we reintroduce new problems. So if we can add compiler flags here that turn these warnings into errors,
Yeah.
I think we should merge this. If we can do that, I can foresee that there'd be an issue where in lots of our third-party libraries, they're doing sort of these implicit conversions. And so those warnings as errors might not be possible, but I'm hoping we can thread a needle there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great idea.
Do we know if those CI flags are possible or what they would be?
We can't hear you, Stefano. Still not working. Still nothing. The cat did it. She's behind you. Yeah, it should be possible to configure the warnings. We may not have as much granularity we want with the dependencies. We are, in fact, in some instances, relaxing the warning as error configuration we have, because some dependencies are not really strict about this kind of stuff.
I'm more wondering if we know the flags to build 32-bit on Windows.
So with CMake, in theory, you just use the correct toolchain. So whenever you configure the project, you pass in the generator with -G. You only have to select the one that ends with Win32. So that should be enough to compile for 32 bits. I'm not sure if there are additional things to keep in mind. Stefano has more experience with this stuff on Windows.
Would this could we do a 32-bit compile on Linux? Would that be easier? Would that be a different test?
Given that we have all the dependencies in the source layer, it should be possible. The only maybe weird thing is OpenSSL, because we are still using the configure script. But yeah, it may be possible.
I'm mostly just sort of hinting at, like, we should do whatever the easiest thing is to do to get a 32-bit compile.
Yeah. I'm actually amazed that there are still people running Windows 32 bits. That's weird.
So cool. I think the next steps here is we sort of communicated these expectations to Breakwell. They mentioned soon, essentially. So just keep our fingers crossed there.
Well, we could decide to help.
Yeah, we could decide to help, like updating the PR or landing the enforcement right now, and then that chain. But landing the enforcement right now ourselves in another PR would be challenging because we have to do the fixes.
We could PR to this PR or
Yeah.
build off of this PR or something, or if we can't update it directly.
Yeah, that's very wishful thinking. Like I think we should just wait, because I don't know if anyone has time to go in and commit to that PR or PR to the PR.
That's why I was asking if we knew what the Azure flags are, because it, in theory, is just an Azure pipeline change.
I see. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess if anyone has guidance about how to do these two things, like, the tech docs to enforce the errors or the example Azure pipeline changes, if you could find that and post it, doesn't have to be correct. You're just like, hey, I saw this, we should just post it on that PR. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's a step because, you know, PRing against this, making a new PR with this as the base and doing the Azure changes in it will immediately get it into CI on that PR. So we'll be able to like see if we missed anything. ARM64 support.
So many
For
build topics. Maybe before we jump into another like build topic, does anyone on the call want to talk about any like observations they have, any bugs they've seen, inconsistencies, things they want to just raise for discussion?
There is a discussion item on a bug that has been added to the agenda doc. If no one speaks up, I'll read this part. Someone added something about the Heisen bug around event subscribers being added twice. I believe is issue
Stefano,
4738.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it is related to Stefano the other day tried out the master branch, and he noticed that for the Windows publishers, in some cases, the flags under the meta table for the event framework was reporting weird results. I'm not sure if it is related to Windows only.
So do we have a reliable reproduction for this?
I don't think so.
We have a set of debugging steps we want if someone finds themselves in this case.
I think the symptom is you're seeing events, you're seeing logs, you're looking at your logs, you're seeing logs where the events are duplicated, and you don't understand why you're getting duplicate events, and you're getting consistent duplicate events. So the implications here are pretty intense. If this bug exists where subscribers are being added twice, that means that your Osquery process starts doing double the work for events publishing, which is already pretty resource intensive, and your log pipeline starts doing double the work.
Oh wait, this is an old bug.
This is an old bug, but
That was a new one.
there are lots of bugs reporting lots. There are like 4 or 5 issues reporting similar symptoms.
So I remember that the first time we have seen this was maybe when Nick fixed this. He removed the Windows event log support from the core, which I did implement, and this was causing the static initializer to start things twice. Maybe something like this.
Good idea. My thought went to when configuration changes are happening, if you look at the update logic for configuration, it stops all of the event publishers and then re-parses all of the configuration and then starts them all up again. So here in code, we explicitly have a situation where we want to start and stop everything. So it makes sense to me that we introduce a bug there where we don't stop everything and then we start everything a second time.
Huh, yeah.
That's on configure load.
That's on configuration change. So if you have a periodic configuration being changed, maybe 1 out of 100 times you hit this Heisenberg scenario and your publishers or your subscribers are added twice. It's unlikely that publishers would be added twice. I could understand a situation where subscribers are added twice.
Do we know which of the two is double? Because we should be able to see that from the events table, right? Or the whatever the metadata about the events should show us.
Yes. That's another thing to look for. Yeah. If anyone encounters this, we can take notes on this. Like if anyone encounters this, then we can ask them to do this, take this debugging step, which is look at the events table. There's another oddball situation where maybe from the Osquery perspective, all the event subscribers are stopped. But from the operating system perspective, it still has some callbacks registered that we didn't tear down correctly. And so then when we turn on the subscribers again, we then re-register callbacks. Not all publishers work like this, but from Osquery's point of view, there is only one subscriber, but from the operating system's point of view, there are 2 callbacks, and they're doing the same thing, which is parsing the event and writing it to RocksDB. There's a lot of things that could be going wrong here. We need a thorough investigation. We need someone to encounter this and for them to be willing to go along the ride of debugging.
So in theory, at least in Windows, quite some time ago, we did a support for naming threads, which may help out with pinpointing what is being run. And I think that the defensive that was experiences that weird situation where the meta table for the event subscriber and publishers were reporting the active subscribers with a wrong value, even though events were not enabled. So if they are related, it should be easy to replicate it. I think they have pasted the command line they used in the channel.
Awesome. Bye, Stefano. Bye, Stefano's cat. Any other things that people are observing they want to talk about?
I've got a question. So I noticed the other day that we don't have a GCP metadata table. We have EC2, we have Azure, we don't have GCP. Adding one is relatively straightforward. But one of the things I've been doing in often Collide's extension land is I've been making a lot of EAV tables because they sort of handle somewhat unknown data formats pretty well. And I was curious, like, how does the room feel about EAV tables in Osquery? Like, would it be interesting to create a cloud metadata table that just attempted to hit all of Azure, GCP, EC2, and spat back a giant set of EAV attributes? Do we not like that model? Do we like explicit schemas?
So you mean collapsing all the different tables into one?
A little bit, but even more than that. So do people know what I mean when I say EAV tables?
Okay. I don't.
Cool. Sorry. I spend more time in SQL, right? So there are a couple of common models for tables that you see. One of them is the traditional model where like everything is a named column, right? And every time you have a new data item, you add a new column. The other one is an EAV table, which is something that shows up when you have less clear schema ahead of time. So you end up having an entity attribute value. So if you imagined like the Windows registry is an EAV table, right? You query the Windows registry and you get back a path, a type, and a value. as opposed to a column for every path. So anything where you see that is actually an EAV table. So you can imagine an EC2 table where instead of having 20 columns, it had 3 columns. And one of them was just, this is EC2, and one of them was the name of the metadata attribute, and the other one was the value of the metadata attribute. So
so similar to the key value tables that we currently have for some of the tables?
Yeah, EAV is a key value table, that's correct.
What's the overhead if you wanted to query a whole bunch of metadata all at once, right? If I needed 20 or 30 things.
Oh, you would. So it's there are 2 pieces to that. The way you usually make an EAV table in this case, right, is the underlying generation. So in all these cases, the underlying generation is going to basically run a curl against an internal endpoint. It's going to give back some JSON object, right? And then either you take that JSON object and you expand it into 1 row with 20 columns, or you expand it into 20 rows. So the overhead is roughly the same. It just changes how you work with it. If you're imagine working with the resultant data, there's a difference between select star from EC2 versus select star from EC2 where value equals X. Or if you wanted to then convert it into a row, you end up having to go through the pivot table transforms, which Fritz has countless blog posts about and are all complete crazy talk. So the underlying overhead is probably about the same. It's the same level of API calls. I'm not sure the Osquery on the wire bandwidth changes much. You probably see a slight increase on EAV. If you're talking about storage and database engines, it depends on the database engine. Most traditional database systems are going to do better with a wide schema than an EAV. As I understand it, things like DynamoDB and other sort of modern giant archival things tend to be EAV oriented. I don't know, mostly curious, like, is this an interesting thing? Do we kind of like the schemas we're using?
My only concern is, like, if people are depending on the current implementation of EC2 tables, it might break their workflow since this will be an API change, but it doesn't affect me.
Or we maintain it. I mean, it's kind of a question of, like, is it more interesting to write a single cloud metadata table that just pulls everything, or is it more interesting to write just another like GCP metadata table analogous to Azure and EC2? Sounds like no one's got strong opinions.
I think the immediate answer would be that it's easier to, or probably easier than a potentially breaking change, depending on how people are using EC2 or Azure tables currently, to just add another one. And then we can, or could, revisit, consolidating and getting that higher level abstraction into cloud metadata at a later point. It's my immediate reaction, but I don't have strong opinions about it, no.
Maybe I'll write it. We can always argue about it in a PR. Or
hooray!
Maybe I'll just write a GCP table. I don't know yet.
Yeah, I think the one thing that would be universally beneficial is like a new GCP table. No one's going to argue with that.
Well, I like EAV tables, although they are somewhat mind-bending.
I don't know why this popped in my mind, but I think it's a cool opportunity I would like to talk about here. I can also write it up as a more formal, like, hey, we need help here issue. So, RocksDB over the last 5 years has been pretty challenging to work with. I think my hypothesis is there's a better way to use RocksDB. either configuring it. If you think Osquery has a lot of configuration options, you should go look at RocksDB. So I think the opportunity is like someone to spend some time profiling how we use RocksDB with event publishers turned on, and see if you can get some insight about how to better configure it. So configuring it would be like going into code and turning on or turning off or changing some values when we essentially construct this like configuration object, and then we pass it into RocksDB when we start it up. So where we might have like optimize for writes per sec for 200 writes per second. I don't think this is actually a value, but you can imagine that maybe the outcome you find is we should change this to 400, or we should make this a configurable option for Osquery in general. Additionally, like there are data layouts that RocksDB uses, and so you could find that a better layout. You could go through like all of the layouts and sort of run the same experiment where you launch like 10,000 processes or something on your host and just see which one like completes the fastest. So yeah, there's like, it's not easy to get started on this, but RocksDB provides a lot of profiling tools, and I'm willing to help if someone can spend some time. I think if you bring some experience doing data analysis, that would be outstanding. Like I think that's the best skill to have to get started here is some data analysis skills.
Weren't the guys at Alien Vault also working on some RocksDB stuff? I mean, that was like a year ago. I'm just trying to remember the QueryCon talk that they gave, though.
So I'm going to throw a couple names under the bus. Alex, formerly Alien Vault, definitely was doing stuff here, and I think part of what he did was actually move away from RocksDB. I'm also going to throw Alessandro under the bus, because Alessandro has frequently pointed out that he thinks we're misusing RocksDB and that maybe it's all like we're not using transactions correctly. So that was a running disagreement between the two of them in terms of benchmarking with RocksDB transactions. I think it'd be really cool if someone could step up and help with that. I think there's definitely some performance and exciting work there.
Alessandro had also proposed that we sort of change how we use RocksDB in the event publisher case. We do this kind of weird thing where we maintain indexes for the published content as well as the data for the published content, and we store them both in RocksDB. The change would be to not store the indexes and just keep them in memory. And then when Osquery starts up, you would then just scan all the data and rebuild the index. I don't know if any analysis has been done into like how much performance we gain when we do that. But just kind of thinking through that approach, it seems great. It seems like it would save us a lot of performance.
Yeah, I should also make the database less breakage prone. In my experience, whenever events stopped coming in from Osquery, it was always due to a database migration gone wrong.
Yeah, so if we maintained the index in memory and like recalculated each time Osquery started, does that mean we wouldn't have to do any database migrations?
I believe so.
That's pretty awesome. A bit of C++ work involved there to pull that off.
Yeah, that's true. Some things to change. But yeah, I think that in general, we should try to avoid storing so much data inside RocksDB. Like the PowerShell event table was originally storing state data inside RocksDB. And I don't think it was covered by the migration procedure. and I ended up removing that and always attempting to perform a cleanup when the publisher starts.
Do we
I
have?
mean, it works fine for events, but not as a property bag, I think.
I have one sort of nebulous request, which is that maybe one of Teddy or Alessandro dump some thoughts about this into a ticket somewhere, be it a blueprint or just a general issue. They're a little less ephemeral than meeting notes, so.
Yeah, sure. We can make a ticket.
Even better if someone was excited to tackle the work, but at least then it'll be captured. Yeah, speaking of that, I'll try and dump some notes about the Heisenbug double events into a ticket, and maybe I'll make a new one and try and consolidate the others. I don't know yet.
Okay, now we can talk about ARM64.
Someone put it on the agenda. Is anyone doing anything with that? Where are we with ARM64?
So my name's Josh. I'm with VMware Carbon Black. We've got an intern with us for another 5 months. We haven't really started anything yet, but we were interested in using him as a resource to help with ARM64 stuff. We had talked with Ted a little bit about that, and then as well as some contacts at Trail of Bits. So nothing's really begun on that, but Justin, he's on the call here, is doing a little reading up, and Ted gave a pull request link, I believe, that he's looking through as well. So yeah, nothing solid there, but just a heads up that Justin is a resource that we're wanting to use to help with the ARM64 port.
Very cool. Nice to meet you guys, Justin and Josh.
Thanks. Nice to meet you too.
Thanks for stepping in. So I guess you're probably just feeling it out, going to try and run some builds, and then we'll see where we go from there, I guess.
So far, that seems to be the plan, yeah.
So I know Artemis did a bunch of work. Like, there's a really massive pull request to land ARM64 support on Linux. That's like a lot of work went into getting this up. I wonder what's the path to landing this. So this would be for Linux, which is like the first step, and then we would have to probably Windows is the second step, is probably the one that's most approachable.
So we merged the one from Artemis.
I don't think we did. We have that as a branch in that we're maintaining, but it's not in master.
Oh, I see. You're right. The
Yeah,
PR 's
I
gonna
merged
merge.
it inside another branch.
Yep. So we want PR 6336.
Because it's not merged in master yet because there are issues with the libraries that we have to address first.
So my gut sense is the steps needed are that it has to build and it has to be in CI. And the internet tells me that there might now be Azure ARM64 support.
Is it possible to break this up into smaller commits and then land those smaller commits without breaking CI?
I have to check out the PR again because I don't remember, but I think most of the changes are on the configuration files.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there are a couple of changes on the CMake too, but the bulk of it is just config files that we have to regenerate on the reference Ubuntu 16 distro. Because I believe they were generated on much earlier version than that, and I don't know if the config files were being properly isolated. I did find some of the existing configs that were leaking against libraries installed on the system, which are the first two commits I made to that branch.
Okay.
It looks like it's predominantly new, mostly new CMake files and new config files.
Yeah. So the rename detection is failing there, but it is huge because some files, or rather all the configuration files were renamed and then slightly changed.
How does this fit with Teddy's header reorg?
I don't think it changes too much.
Okay.
Since most of those files are for the third-party dependencies. It is still based on bug. We have to rebase it.
But in theory, we could land this PR the way it is right now, and then in follow-up PRs, we could then go and regenerate the config files for the third-party libraries using our toolchain.
Yeah, I think we can. But there are still some things on CMake to fix. There are some tables that have been modified to return nothing, and we should probably disable them.
Yeah. So what if we take approach like this? Pardon me as I think through this. So we want to not disrupt x86-64. So changes must not impact the x86-64 builds. The changes can be half or like half measures for ARM64. And we're not trying to race through ARM64 support completely in one PR, but we want to rather make incremental changes. So we can land ARM64 support that isn't complete, or we could land it in a way that has some hacks, as long as we commit coming back and following up. Yeah, it's a reasonable approach. Like one hack is like CPU ID doesn't apply. So
Sorry, no, laughing at something else entirely.
Oh, okay. So we just make it a no op, right? Which I think is what this PR does. I think that's a good approach. And then, later when we're finished and we're ready to release ARM64, we can then make the decision of the tables that don't apply cleanly. Do we just want to disable them, or do we want them to return 0 data, right?
I agree that I think it's okay to merge things in a non-ideal state or an incomplete state, as long as it's not breaking x86-64. But I think that raises a question of what's the best way to sort of merge something and know that we have to revisit it. So if we just sort of null a table out, how will we remember to revisit that table in 3 months? I feel like disabling the table is a little bit cleaner sounding to me, unless it's... So I don't know, I guess there are two questions there. Maybe one of them is I feel like I'd rather disable than null. And a different one is, regardless of what we do, how will we track what we have to revisit?
We can just maybe create some issues about it as bugs.
We have a lot of issues.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, some of them are small. Like, yeah, the CPU ID table, I don't think it can be implemented as it is in this architecture. So we probably just have to disable it. And we can then create another issue just to track the list of dependencies we have to regenerate. And I don't remember there were other issues about it. So it should be two issues.
I'm sure we'll find more as we go on, but yeah, this isn't like 20 issues. This is like less than 10. I do also want to like purge all of our issues at one point. So I'm going to create like the 100 issues project and then try to get us down to just 100 issues.
I was going to request that too. Like, so many old ones, especially with like tests and Hacktoberfest ones.
Yeah. So I'll say first, Teddy, you've done a great job getting the PRs down to 20. So kudos. Same thing for issues. I think if we're willing to basically just bulk close out a lot of the good first issues, like they're sort of needless. Like I don't think we really need an issue saying, you know, this table, it's never had tests. Maybe you should add tests to a table. Like I think they're there to spark interest for people, not.
This is going to be depressing to hear, but I've already closed all those issues.
Yay.
So
thanks.
There are still 426 issues.
There used to be like 1,000, so nice going.
I think I'm torn against, this is just in general, like this is general character flaw. Lots of good recommendations and like wish list items and feature requests. It's good to have them, right? And good to kind of discuss them in the issues. But at this scale, like it's nice to know about the things we need to triage as potential problems. The high pry requests that like have really strong use cases behind them, and then bugs. So maybe there's an alternate approach to closing the issues and we adopt some sort of project management strategy here and project management tool that gives us a view into like the high pry things that we're working on, the stuff that we need to fix. And then we still allow people this form to like request features and discuss wish list items. Something to think about.
Bouncing back to ARM64. It sounds like there's only a small amount of work we think needs to happen on this PR before it can merge.
Small amount of work on this PR, yeah, if we make some decisions about like we're going to commit to ARM64 support, and that means quite a few follow-up PRs. Like if we make that commitment, then yeah, we can get this done.
My assumption is that Apple's silicon implies that we have already committed to this.
So the CMake changes are not that big. They may work on Apple Silicon. If we had a machine, we could try that out.
Mostly my guess is that it probably isn't perfect, but it's probably like the start of that work because Apple Silicon is ultimately an ARM64 machine. So.
Does anyone know when the first glibc supported ARM64? Is it 2.23? 2.23?
I went back to Ubuntu 16 to regenerate those configuration files for the libraries. I'd expect to be the same.
Okay, Ubuntu 16. Okay.
So if we merge it right now, the worst that can happen is that the binary won't work on some distributions.
I will sign off on the idea that as long as we don't break anything in x86-64, it's okay if ARM64 is unstable because it will give us cleaner and smaller PRs. It's always easier to review small PRs than like one giant PR that just has rolling hotfixes in it.
It is a fine approach. We can rebase the branch and then make a PR.
Teddy, what version were you asking about for glibc?
Right now, for CentOS 6 support, we support glibc 2.12 plus.
Yep.
And ideally, we could keep that. I'm not sure if glibc 2.12 supports ARM.
Would we use different glibcs for the different architectures?
No, we don't supply the glibc. We just have linking requirements for it. So when we configure, we want to configure against the oldest glibc that we want to support. So,
but we could have them different on the different platforms.
Yeah. They're backwards compatible.
Yeah,
they're backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea there is that you want to initially, when you compile, you want to verify that the symbols are available on the oldest glibc, so the 2.12. Then you do not end up actually using that glibc. You use the one present on the system. So, and this is possible because glibc uses versioning symbols, whatever, which tells you where those symbols are present in which version of glibc, and so you do not link something you can't use.
All right, folks, I'm going to go. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, David.
Bye.
Bye.
And well, just a last quick comment. I don't know if Azure Pipelines is adding though the hosted agent for ARM. I think that there's support for their agent software, which you can install on one of your machines if you want. So you can then connect it as a self-hosted agent. So we will still need hardware for it.
Maybe I'm misreading this announcement.
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing. I also checked the other page, which shows this one. Maybe they haven't yet updated this, but let's see.
I don't know. As mentioned in one of these meetings, I tried to use Azure Pipelines and it makes me cry, so I got nothing.
To be fair, in general, I think that I do not like much Microsoft Docs. In general, also for Windows work, they are too fragmented. But yeah.
Like the YAML file is fine, but the actual like management size just really is bad.
So yeah, I don't know. In that link I put, there's still no Linux ARM image, it seems.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just looking at that.
The sprint.
The sprint. I was looking at that.
Yeah.
No, not that. Yes, that. Yeah, that. Which basically just says, Azure Pipelines now supports Linux ARM64, as was requested by the community. Go us. So not a lot of information there. I can't tell if that is just as you're suggesting, the need for that.
Yeah, there they only talk about the it as a platform and changes to the code of the agent, and that's it. So that's why
I got nothing.
I'll dig into it a little bit, but yeah, it doesn't appear to be live.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to drop out as well.
Okay, well, everyone's gone, but thanks for those of you who are left. And
Cheers, everybody. Have a good
talk
week.
to y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.